The summer of 1943 was a heavy one at the small airfield near Lincolnshire, England. I'm James Carter, Chief Engineer assigned to the Royal Air Force's Technical Evaluation Unit. That morning, we received news that felt like a double-edged sword. An American P-47 Thunderbolt had been forced down behind enemy lines and its pilot captured. The aircraft itself, remarkably, was mostly intact. For months, our pilots had been reporting encounters with this bulky, almost comically ungainly fighter, nicknamed the Flying Milk Bottle by some, and now, for the first time, I had the chance to see one up close. When I first laid eyes on the Thunderbolt, my initial thought mirrored that of every pilot who had crossed paths with it. How on earth could this lumbering beast fly? Its massive fuselage, built around an enormous radial engine, seemed more like a flying tank than a fighter. The thing looked like it was wearing armor 2 sizes too big, waddling on stubby wings like a pigeon trying to pass as an eagle. You half expected it to honk like a goose. But I'm an engineer, not a poet, and looks only tell part of the story. I knew that beneath this awkward exterior was a machine designed with purpose and precision, and as I began my inspection, it became clear that this milk bottle was less of a joke and more of a prophecy. We started by peeling back the cowling of the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine. 18 cylinders arranged in twin rows of 9, a monstrous radial that explained the aircraft's bulk. Standing there, I felt dwarfed by the sheer scale and craftsmanship. Each component was machined to perfection, tighter tolerances than anything we could reliably produce back home. The crankshaft alone was a work of art, forged from high-grade steel that made our best feel like cast-offs. Calculations soon revealed the real shocker. This engine was cranking out close to 2,000 horsepower, powered further by a sophisticated turbo supercharger built into the fuselage. Our own Spitfire's Merlin engine, powerful as it was, couldn't match this raw output. The Americans weren't just making engines stronger, they were mass-producing them, with a manufacturing precision and scale that made our efforts look like craft projects by comparison. One of the mechanics on my team, a sharp-eyed woman named Emily, who had been working on aircraft engines since before the war, pointed out a detail that made me nod slowly in admiration. Each cylinder was designed to be removed and replaced individually. If one failed, you didn't have to dismantle the entire engine to fix it. It was a maintenance engineer's dream and a nightmare for us. Our designs often sacrificed ease of repair for weight savings, but this American design assumed that planes would be frequently serviced and kept flying with minimal downtime. And then came the turbo supercharger system, a marvel of engineering that made my stomach twist in dread. While we had experimented with such technology, none of our squadrons had yet fielded it successfully. The American system used exhaust gases to spin a turbine at dizzying speeds, pushing pressurized air back into the engine and maintaining full power at altitudes above 25,000 feet, exactly where our fighters started to suffocate. The implications were brutal. At high altitudes, where we depended on intercepting bomber formations, the Thunderbolt would dominate. Its engine held power where ours lost it, and that meant the difference between life and death in the skies over Europe. I tried to ask my team if we could replicate the system. Not with what we have, I admitted grimly. This requires precision machining, high-grade alloys, thousands of skilled man-hours. We're already struggling to produce the basics. It's out of reach. What really haunted me was not just the technology, but what it symbolized. This aircraft wasn't just a machine. It was a monument to an industrial might we simply couldn't match. The P-47 was a brutal reminder that the war wasn't just fought with bullets and bombs. It was won in factories and foundries. As I took notes, the massive Thunderbolt sat silently on the tarmac, its battle scars visible, a testament to its toughness. The fuselage bore holes from cannon shells, wings riddled with machine gun fire, yet it had flown home like a wounded but unbroken beast. Our pilots had pumped rounds into it only to watch it shrug off the damage and keep lunging forward. The cockpit was armored with thick steel plates and bulletproof glass that outmatched anything on our planes. The radial engine served as a shield, unlike our fragile liquid-cooled engines that could be crippled by a single hit to the coolant system. Emily joked, "It's overbuilt, mate. It's like they threw a tank engine in and called it a day." I smiled, but the truth was bitter. They could afford that weight because their engines had the power to carry it. We couldn't. The armament was equally staggering. 8.50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, each loaded with hundreds of rounds. The combined firepower could unleash a torrent of lead that would tear through our lightweight fighters like paper. A 1-second burst meant 100 rounds. A typical firing pass could send 200 into a target. Our fighters had fewer guns, less ammunition, and nowhere near that sustained firepower. This wasn't just a better plane. It was a brutal statement of industrial superiority. I sat at my desk later, crunching numbers and staring into the abyss. American production was staggering. Over 500 P-47s a month from Republic Aviation alone, with plans to ramp up even further. Meanwhile, our factories strained under Allied bombing raids and resource shortages, producing fewer than half that number across all fighter types. The disparity was staggering. Their factories, converted from car plants and machine shops, churned out advanced engines and airframes in quantities we could only envy. The P-47 engine alone was produced in numbers exceeding 125,000 units by war's end, more than twice the total number of all German aircraft engines combined. I knew what my report would say, and I dreaded the reaction. This wasn't just an analysis, it was a warning. Our current tactics, our belief in superior skill and willpower, were doomed against this industrial juggernaut. We needed to change or face annihilation. But when I presented my findings to my superiors, the look I received told me everything. "This will not be popular in London," my commanding officer said quietly. "They don't want to hear that the Yank planes are better." Should I soften it? I asked, though I knew the answer. No. The truth is the truth. But prepare yourself. The powers that be don't like uncomfortable facts. And so my report went up the chain, only to vanish into a bureaucratic black hole. Whispers reached me that it had been dismissed as defeatist propaganda, a defeatist engineer succumbing to enemy myth. I wasn't surprised. I had seen it before. In war, inconvenient truths are often buried beneath ideology and wishful thinking. But as the months passed, the evidence grew undeniable. The P-47 thundered over Europe in increasing numbers, our fighters falling before its relentless assault. Our pilots fought bravely, but the industrial tide was against us. I examined other captured American planes, transports, Mustangs with their Rolls-Royce Merlins built under license, each a testament to a production machine that Germany could not rival. The war was being lost not on the battlefield, but in the factories, the foundries, the assembly lines. And yet, the leadership refused to accept it. The war we thought we were fighting, of pilots and dogfights, was really a war of steel and sweat, of raw materials and relentless production. America had the resources, the manpower, and the will to keep the machines rolling. We did not. As I closed my notebook that night, the Thunderbolt's shadow seemed to stretch across my desk. One captured aircraft had revealed the fate of a nation. But even as I realized the scale of the challenge, something in the depths of that machine whispered a darker secret. The P-47 was just one piece of a puzzle, and in the shadows, other forces were stirring. Forces that might change everything again. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the real war was yet to come. The next morning, the airfield was cloaked in a thick, damp fog that made the world feel muffled and distant, like the calm before a storm. I was already at the hangar when Emily arrived, her dark hair pulled back into a tight bun, a streak of grease smudging her cheek despite her best efforts. She wore the standard-issue RAF uniform, but with a twist, a slightly unbuttoned collar and a silk scarf tucked just so, hinting at a rebellious streak beneath the practical exterior. Her boots were polished, yet scuffed from the morning's work, and there was a glint in her green eyes that suggested she enjoyed pushing boundaries as much as she loved engines. We were about to delve deeper into the P-47's airframe. The previous day's engine inspection had left me unsettled, but today's task felt just as critical. The aircraft sat there, hulking and silent, its battle scars stark against the dull aluminum skin. I couldn't help but notice the contrast. Here was a machine designed to endure, while every German fighter I knew felt like a delicate dancer, nimble but fragile. Emily handed me a wrench with a sly grin. "Fancy a dance with the beast today, James? Just don't step on its toes." I chuckled, the tension easing for a moment. If this thing had toes, I'm pretty sure it would stomp us into the ground. We began by examining the wing structure. Inside, the framing was robust, built with thick spars and reinforced ribs that reminded me more of a battleship's hull than an aircraft's skeleton. The skin was heavier gauge aluminum than we typically used, but it was bonded and riveted with such precision that the whole wing was almost seamless. I ran my hand along the metal, feeling the cold strength beneath. Emily pointed out the damage. Cannon shell holes clustered in patterns, each surrounded by slight bulges in the skin where the metal had stretched but not torn. "See this, James? It's like the metal's been punched and told to keep going." I nodded. "It's overbuilt, but that's the point. This plane isn't meant to dance lightly. It's meant to take the punches and keep fighting." We moved to the fuselage, where the cockpit sat encased in thick armor plating. The bulletproof glass was so thick it distorted the view slightly, but it was clear this was a fortress meant to protect the pilot at all costs. The steel plates around the cockpit were curved and welded with care, designed to deflect rather than absorb. I imagined the pilot inside, feeling the reassuring weight of that armor even as tracer rounds tore past. As I ran a gloved hand over the armor, Emily teased, "Bet the pilot feels like he's sitting in a tank. Wonder if they get motion sickness." I smirked. "Probably not. Though if he does, at least he's got a good excuse." The real surprise came when we examined the control systems. Unlike our own fighters, where cables and pulleys were exposed and vulnerable beneath panels, the P-47's wiring and hydraulics were encased in redundant channels, shielded from battle damage. Every critical system had a backup, ensuring that a single hit wouldn't cripple the plane's controls. Emily whistled softly. They didn't just think about flying. They thought about surviving. I made notes, the words feeling heavier with each entry. The Americans had built a machine not just to win battles, but to endure wars. Later, as we worked, a courier arrived with fresh intelligence reports. We gathered around the small table in the hangar's corner, the yellowed pages illuminated by a single flickering bulb. The numbers confirmed what I feared. American production was not only outpacing us, it was accelerating. 500 Thunderbolts a month from Republic alone, I read aloud. They're planning to push to 700 by next year. Emily shook her head. That's insane. We can barely keep the Spitfires flying. Another mechanic, a young lad named Tom with a boyish face and grease-streaked overalls, piped up. "And that's just fighters. What about bombers?" "Transport." I pulled up reports on the C-47 Skitran, the workhorse transport plane that kept Allied forces supplied across the globe. Over 10,000 produced and counting. Our Luftwaffe transport fleet was a fraction of that, mostly older models struggling to keep pace. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about the P-47. It was about a massive, coordinated industrial machine that Germany simply couldn't match. Emily sighed, wiping sweat from her brow. "It's like we're trying to fight with pocket knives against a factory full of cannons." I looked back at the Thunderbolt, its battered but unbowed frame gleaming faintly in the dim light. The plane seemed almost alive, a steel colossus built to endure and overwhelm. But beneath that cold metal, I sensed a deeper story. A story not just of engines and armor, but of something lurking in the shadows of this war. Something that no report could capture, no numbers could explain. As we packed up for the night, Emily glanced at me, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. "You ever wonder if this war's about more than just planes and factories? Like there's a game being played, and we're just the pawns?" I hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe. And if that's true, then this Thunderbolt isn't just a machine. It's a message we weren't ready to read. And somewhere, deep inside the belly of that captured aircraft, I knew a secret waited, one that might change everything we thought we knew about the war. But for now, all I could do was prepare for the next battle, knowing that the future was as uncertain as the dawn's fog outside. The sun was just breaking over the rolling fields of Norfolk when I arrived at the airfield, the chill of dawn still clinging to the grass like a stubborn shadow. I found Emily already there, leaning against the Thunderbolt's massive wing, her sharp eyes tracing the outline of the aircraft, as if she were reading a secret script etched into the metal. Today, our mission was to dissect the P-47's cockpit and avionics, the brain and nerve center of this beast. While the plane's brute strength was intimidating, it was the subtle sophistication behind the pilot's seat that truly set it apart. Emily smiled when she saw me approach. Ready to get cozy with the pilot's chair? I grinned. As cozy as one can be with a flying tank. We climbed up the ladder to the cockpit, the cramped space a stark contrast to the enormous frame surrounding it. The seat was bulky but ergonomically designed, padded with thick cushions that promised comfort on long missions. The leather straps of the harness gleamed, worn but well-maintained, suggesting a pilot who valued both safety and style. The instrument panel was a marvel of clarity and precision. Each gauge was thoughtfully placed, large enough to read at a glance, with backlighting that made night flying a less daunting task. Unlike some of our RAF aircraft where cluttered dials and confusing layouts could cause a pilot's eyes to dart frantically, this cockpit spoke of careful design and pilot-centric engineering. Emily tapped the throttle lever affectionately. This baby's got a smooth touch, not like our clunky Spitfire throttles that sometimes feel like you're wrestling a wild animal. I nodded, running my fingers over the switches and toggles. The radio equipment was state-of-the-art, capable of clear communication over long distances, a crucial advantage for coordination during complex missions. The cockpit also featured a gun sight that used reflector technology, allowing the pilot to aim accurately without diverting attention from the target. I chuckled softly. Makes you wonder if the Yank pilots get to spend more time shooting and less time fumbling with controls. Emily raised an eyebrow. Well, considering the firepower they're packing, I'd say they can afford to be a bit distracted. As we continued our inspection, I couldn't help but admire the subtle eroticism of the cockpit's design. The way the instrument panel curved around the pilot like a lover's embrace, the polished metal levers beckoning with promises of power and control. It was a cockpit built to seduce, to coax the pilot into a symbiotic dance of machine and man. But beneath the allure lay cold, hard facts. This was not a playground. It was a command center engineered for efficiency and survival. Emily leaned close to examine the canopy's locking mechanism, her fingers tracing the smooth edges. The canopy itself was a bubble design, offering the pilot an almost panoramic view, a deadly advantage in dogfights. The glass was thick but crystal clear, with layers designed to resist shrapnel and small arms fire. Suddenly, Emily's expression darkened. She pointed to a small panel beneath the dashboard. Look at this wiring. It's modular, can be quickly disconnected and replaced. They thought about keeping the plane flying even when things go wrong. I frowned. That kind of foresight. It's like they're planning for the worst but expecting the best. We worked in silence for a while. The only sounds the soft clink of tools and the distant hum of other planes taking off. Then Emily broke the quiet. You know, James, it's not just the machine that's impressive. It's the mindset behind it. They build for endurance, for adaptability. They don't expect perfection every time but want to make sure the pilot can keep fighting no matter what. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. Our own designs often chase the ideal. Speed, agility, elegance, but sometimes at the cost of durability and practicality. As we packed up, a sudden commotion at the airfield caught our attention. 2 officers hurried toward us, their faces tight with urgency. The younger one, Lieutenant Harris, handed me a folded dispatch with trembling hands. Sir, this just came from London. High Command wants immediate reassessment of our air tactics in response to increasing P-47 activity. I unfolded the paper, scanning the terse message. Avoid prolonged engagements with P-47s at altitude. Emphasize hit-and-run tactics. Reevaluate pilot training accordingly. Emily snorted. So, they finally admit the milk bottle's a killer. I sighed. Too little, too late. We've been warning about this for months. Lieutenant Harris looked between us anxiously. There's also talk of new American fighters, faster, longer range. The Mustang, they call it. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. The P-47 was bad enough, but a new breed of enemy was on the horizon. The war was evolving faster than we could keep up. As the officers hurried away, Emily turned to me, a gleam of determination in her eyes. "Looks like we're going to have to fight smarter, not just harder." I nodded, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on my shoulders. The war was no longer just a contest of skill or bravery. It was a race against time, technology, and raw industrial might. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the roar of engines and the crackle of radios, a secret was waiting to be uncovered. One that could change everything we thought we knew about the enemy's edge. But to find it, we would have to dive deeper into the heart of the war machine. And that meant risking everything. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sleepy village of Ashby St. Mary as I made my way toward the makeshift workshop tucked behind the old barn. The airfield was a hive of activity, but here, away from the roar of engines and barking orders, Emily and I could dig into the finer details of the Thunderbolt secrets in relative peace. Emily was already there when I arrived, kneeling beside a workbench strewn with schematics and parts salvaged from the captured plane. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing slender forearms dusted with grime, the kind of hands that spoke of both delicate precision and hard labor. She wore a fitted blue blouse, the top buttons undone just enough to hint at the curve of her collarbone, paired with a pencil skirt that ended just above the knee. Practical yet undeniably feminine. Her boots, sturdy and worn, thudded softly as she rose to greet me. "Ready to wrestle with the wiring harness?" she asked, flashing a grin that was equal parts challenge and invitation. I smirked. "After what we've seen, I'm bracing for battle." Our task today was to unravel the Thunderbolt's electrical system, the nervous wiring that made the aircraft responsive and lethal. As we worked, Emily's nimble fingers threaded through bundles of cables, carefully separating them while I traced circuits with a flashlight, trying to make sense of the American design philosophy. It was immediately clear that their approach favored modularity. Connectors snapped together with surprising ease, allowing rapid replacement of damaged sections. The wires themselves were sheathed in durable insulation, resistant to heat and abrasion, designed to survive the punishment of combat. Emily quipped, "It's like they expected the plane to be tossed around like a rag doll and still keep the lights on." I nodded, impressed despite myself. "Makes our patchwork wiring look like a house of cards." As we delved deeper, a curious pattern emerged. The Americans had integrated redundancy at nearly every level, dual circuits for critical systems, backup power supplies, fail-safes that ensured the pilot wouldn't be left blind or defenseless after a hit. Emily's eyes sparkled with a mix of admiration and frustration. "They've built this beast to shrug off failure. We build for perfection, but they build for survival." We paused when I uncovered a compact metal box mounted under the instrument panel, a primitive but effective form of early avionics, housing a radio transceiver and a rudimentary navigation aid. The unit was rugged, bolted securely to withstand vibration, and wired directly into the plane's electrical grid. I ran my fingers over the cool metal. Communication and navigation, the lifelines in any mission. If these fail, the pilot's dead in the water. Emily leaned in, voice dropping conspiratorially. "You know, James, sometimes I think this whole war is just a mess of wires and secrets. And the better tangled the wires, the harder it is to find the truth." I caught her gaze, feeling a flicker of something unspoken between us. A shared understanding that the war was more than machines and numbers. It was a puzzle with pieces hidden in shadows. Our concentration was broken by the sudden arrival of Captain Thompson, a sharp-eyed intelligence officer known for his no-nonsense approach. He swept into the workshop, eyes scanning the scattered parts with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. "Carter, Miss Blake," he greeted briskly. "I've just received word from London. There's been chatter about a secret American project, something beyond the P-47 and Mustang. Code name Shadow Hawk. We need you to look into any anomalies in the captured aircraft that might hint at this." Emily exchanged a glance with me. "Shadow Hawk? Sounds like something out of a spy novel." Captain Thompson's expression hardened. "It's real and it's worrisome. If the Americans are already working on something new, we could be in serious trouble." I felt a chill creep down my spine. The war was evolving faster than we could grasp, and the captured Thunderbolt might only be the tip of the iceberg. As Thompson left, Emily turned to me, her voice low and urgent. We need to dig deeper. Find anything unusual in the plane systems. Hidden compartments, encrypted wiring, anything. I swallowed hard, realizing that our investigation had just taken a dangerous turn. The Thunderbolt was no longer just a symbol of American industrial might. It might hold secrets that could change the course of the war. As dusk settled over Ashby St. Mary, the shadows lengthened, and the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on us. Beneath the sleek metal skin of the captured fighter, mysteries waited, waiting to be uncovered. And in the quiet corners of the workshop, amid tangled wires and whispered fears, I sensed the war's next chapter was about to begin. The night had wrapped the airfield in a thick blanket of darkness, broken only by the faint glow of a lone oil lamp flickering on our workbench. Emily and I sat hunched over the P-47's stripped wiring harness, the tangle of cables resembling a nest of vipers, each one hiding a secret. The silence between us was heavy, filled with the unspoken tension of what we might uncover. Emily's fingers danced deftly, peeling back insulation with practiced ease. Her blouse was now rolled up to her elbows, the soft fabric clinging slightly from the day's work, revealing the delicate line of her wrist and the subtle curve of her forearm. Despite the grime and sweat, there was something quietly seductive in the way she moved, focused, confident, and utterly in control. I tried to focus on the task at hand, but the dim light and the closeness of the space made it hard not to notice. The warmth of the lamp cast soft shadows that played along her face, highlighting the sharpness of her cheekbones and the spark in her eyes. War had a strange way of making moments like this both rare and electric. "James," she whispered suddenly, breaking the silence. "Look at this." I leaned in, my breath catching slightly as she pointed to a small, inconspicuous junction box hidden beneath a cluster of wires. Its cover was sealed with a tamper-proof fastener, unlike anything we'd seen in the rest of the plane. With careful hands, I worked to pry it open, revealing a compact array of circuitry unlike the rest of the harness. Neatly soldered connections, strange symbols etched onto the metal casing, and what appeared to be a miniature encryption module. Emily's voice was barely audible. "This isn't just wiring. It's a communication relay, or worse, a code scrambler." A shiver ran down my spine. If the Americans had embedded secret electronics here, it could explain the rumors of their mysterious Shadowhawk project. Something advanced, hidden in plain sight. We hurried to document our findings, snapping photos and sketching diagrams by the flickering lamp, all while the darkness outside deepened, as if the night itself was closing in on us. Suddenly, the distant rumble of engines broke the stillness. Searchlights swept across the skies. Another air raid was underway. The thudding of anti-aircraft guns echoed like a heartbeat, a grim reminder that the war was never far from us. Emily paused, her fingers trembling slightly. "They're getting closer every night. Feels like the noose is tightening." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "And here we are, chasing shadows inside a captured plane." She looked up at me, her eyes locking with mine. "Maybe it's more than just a shadow. Maybe it's the key." Before I could respond, a sudden crash from outside startled us. We rushed to the window to see a delivery truck overturned near the hangar, its cargo spilled across the muddy ground. Men scrambled to secure the area, but something about the scene felt off. Too hurried, too chaotic. Emily frowned. "That wasn't an accident." I agreed silently. In a war fueled by secrets, every disturbance was a potential threat. As we returned to our work, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, by eyes unseen, tracking every move, guarding the secrets hidden within the Thunderbolt. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond the airfield, the real game was just beginning. The dawn crept in slowly over the quiet village of Ashby St. Mary, painting the sky with pale hues of pink and gold. The air still hung heavy with the residue of last night's raid, the distant echoes of exploding shells fading like a bad dream. But inside the workshop, tension pulsed thick as ever. Emily and I sat side by side at the workbench, the stripped-down P-47 fuselage looming behind us like a silent sentinel. The encrypted module we'd uncovered still puzzled us, its intricate circuitry hinting at secrets beyond our current understanding. The hum of distant activity from the airfield was a constant reminder that time was running short. Emily pulled a folded map from her satchel, a detailed chart of enemy air routes and factory locations. Her fingers traced the lines with a mixture of frustration and determination. James, this Shadow Hawk project. If it's real, it's not just about a new plane. It's about control, communications, intelligence, maybe even electronic warfare. I nodded, eyes scanning the map. If they're integrating this tech into their fighters, it means they're planning to fight differently. Smarter. Faster. She glanced at me, a sly smile tugging at her lips. Sounds like they're trying to outwit us, not just outgun us. Our moment of levity was shattered by the abrupt entrance of Major Reynolds, a stern figure whose sharp gaze cut through the dim light like a blade. His uniform was impeccable, the brass glinting on his chest, but there was no mistaking the weariness etched into his face. "Carter, Blake," he began without preamble. "I've just received orders from command. You're to halt your investigation immediately. All findings on the captured P-47 are to be sealed and forwarded up the chain. No exceptions." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Sir, with all due respect, this plane holds information that could change the course of the war. We can't just stop now." Reynolds' expression hardened. "Orders are orders. The higher-ups don't want this information circulating. They believe it could cause panic, undermine morale." I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to argue. Suppressing truth for comfort is a dangerous game. The Major's gaze flickered, a hint of sympathy beneath the official mask. "I understand your frustration, but discretion is paramount. You will comply." As he turned to leave, Emily whispered under her breath, "So much for fighting the war with open eyes." Once the door closed behind Reynolds, the weight of the command hung over us like a storm cloud. For a moment, silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then Emily spoke, voice low but resolute. "We can't let this die here, James. If we don't act, who will?" I met her gaze, feeling the fire of conviction ignite between us. "We keep digging, quietly, carefully, but we don't stop." The day wore on with painstaking effort, as we pieced together what we could from the captured aircraft and the cryptic module. Every discovery deepened the mystery. Encrypted signals embedded within the plane systems, complex wiring that hinted at remote control capabilities, and a level of electronic sophistication that seemed decades ahead. As twilight approached, a sudden knock at the workshop door jolted us both. I opened it to find a courier, breathless and wide-eyed, clutching a sealed envelope marked "Top Secret." I tore it open, my heart pounding as I read the brief message. Urgent. Enemy intelligence reports indicate increased American focus on electronic warfare. Possible deployment of new technologies in upcoming raids. Prepare for unexpected tactics. Emily's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and determination. They're coming for us with a new kind of war. I swallowed hard, realizing that our fight was no longer just for the skies, but for the very future of warfare itself. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the shadow of the Shadow Hawk was spreading, ready to strike. The war was changing, and so must we. That night, the airfield was cloaked in an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant drone of patrols and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by a restless wind. The usual hum of activity had quieted, as if the world held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game far larger than any of us. Emily and I sat in the dim glow of a single lantern, the captured P-47's cockpit canopy propped open beside us, revealing the intricate maze of controls and instruments that had become our obsession. The encrypted module rested on the table, its secrets still locked tight, teasing us with the promise of revelations just out of reach. Emily leaned back, exhaustion etched into the lines of her face, but her eyes burned with determination. "James, we're chasing ghosts here, but these ghosts could change everything. Imagine if the Americans have a device that can jam our radios or intercept our communications." I rubbed my temples, the weight of the endless puzzle pressing down. "If they do, it means our pilots could be flying blind in the middle of a fight. we'd be sitting ducks. A sudden sharp knock at the door jolted us both. I exchanged a quick glance with Emily before moving cautiously to open it. Standing there was Lieutenant Collins, his face pale and drawn. "Sir, Miss Blake," he said urgently. "There's been a security breach at the airfield. Sensitive documents have gone missing, and there's suspicion that enemy agents are operating nearby." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Enemy agents? Here? That's too close for comfort." Collins nodded gravely. "We're increasing patrols, but I thought you should be warned. Your work on the P-47 might have attracted unwanted attention." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. The deeper we dug, the more dangerous this became. As Collins left, I closed the door and turned to Emily. "They're on to us. We need to be more careful." She nodded, biting her lip. "But how do we protect what we've found without drawing more attention?" Before I could answer, a faint beep echoed from the encrypted module. We both froze, eyes locked on the device. The sound was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Emily reached out, fingers trembling slightly, and pressed a hidden switch. A small panel slid open, revealing a series of blinking lights and a coded message scrolling across a tiny screen. I stared in disbelief. "It's active. This thing's still communicating." Emily's breath caught. "But with whom? And what are they saying?" We worked quickly, decoding fragments of the transmission. The message hinted at coordinated operations, mentions of blackout zones and silent wings, terms that sent a chill down my spine. Suddenly, the lantern flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. The room grew cold, shadows stretching like fingers toward us. Emily's voice was steady but low. "They're coming for this, James. We're in deeper than we thought." I reached out, taking her hand briefly, a silent promise that we'd face whatever came together. Outside, the wind howled, carrying with it the distant thunder of engines. Not ours, but something else. The night had turned into a battlefield of secrets. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows, the true power behind the Shadow Hawk was awakening. Our fight was just beginning. The morning mist clung stubbornly to the fields outside the airfield as I made my way to the briefing room, the weight of last night's revelations pressing heavily on my shoulders. Emily was already inside, sitting by the window, her sharp silhouette outlined against the pale light. The exhaustion in her eyes was tempered by a fierce resolve that mirrored my own. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Major Reynolds stood at the front, flanked by a handful of officers whose faces ranged from skepticism to outright concern. The brass had finally called a meeting to discuss the captured P-47 and its implications, though the official line still danced carefully around outright admission of American superiority. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Gentlemen and Miss Blake, Mr. Carter, our intelligence confirms that the Americans are advancing rapidly in electronic warfare. The Shadow Hawk program represents a significant leap in their capabilities." A murmur rippled through the room. One officer scoffed quietly. "All talk and no proof. They've always relied on brute force." Emily's eyes flashed. "Brute force backed by brains is still force. We've seen the technology firsthand." I stepped forward, voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "The encrypted module we extracted is active. It's communicating, possibly coordinating with other aircraft or ground stations." Major Reynolds nodded grimly. "We must assume the worst. Our pilots could be flying into traps they don't even see coming." The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken fear. Then came the orders. Increase electronic countermeasures, revise tactics immediately, and accelerate pilot training to cope with new threats. But beneath the official directives lay a deeper unease, an acknowledgement that the war was shifting beneath our feet. After the meeting, Emily and I lingered in the hallway, the weight of responsibility heavy between us. She exhaled slowly. "They're finally taking it seriously, but I wonder if it's too late." I shook my head. "We have to believe it's not. We have to fight smarter." Her gaze drifted to the distant horizon where heavy bombers roared overhead, their silhouettes dark against the brightening sky. "James," she said softly, "this war isn't just about machines or factories anymore. It's a battle of secrets, shadows, and minds." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within me. As we parted ways to prepare for the day's missions, a sudden message crackled over the radio. A distress call from a reconnaissance plane. The pilot reported unusual electronic interference, followed by an attack from a new type of fighter, faster and more elusive than anything we'd seen. Emily caught my arm, eyes wide. The Shadow Hawk isn't just a theory anymore. I clenched my fists, determination hardening. Then we'll face it head-on, whatever it takes. The skies above England were changing, and with them the fate of the war. But in the shadows, a darker secret waited, one that could unravel everything we thought we knew, and only those willing to confront the unknown would survive what came next. The evening air was thick with the scent of rain and burnt fuel as I made my way back to the hangar. The sky bruised with clouds that threatened a storm. The distant drone of aircraft engines filled the horizon. Another restless night for the airmen and machines alike. Emily was already there, crouched beside the Thunderbolt's fuselage, her hands tracing the riveted seams as if trying to read the story written in metal. She looked up as I approached, her dark eyes reflecting the pale light. Her uniform jacket was unbuttoned, revealing the curve of her neck and the elegant line of her collarbone. A small glimpse of softness amid the harsh realities we faced. There was a tension in her posture, a mix of exhaustion and fierce determination. "We intercepted another transmission," she said without preamble, handing me a worn sheet of paper covered in coded symbols and hastily scribbled notes. I scanned the messages, my heart pounding. The codes hinted at a new American tactic, coordinated strikes using electronic jamming to blind our radar and communications, followed by rapid attacks from fighters dubbed Silent Shadows. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're not just fighting with planes anymore. They're fighting with silence." I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. If they can disrupt our systems like this, our pilots will be flying blind, easy targets. She nodded, eyes blazing. "We need a counter. Something to break their silence." As we debated possible responses, a sudden noise outside caught our attention. A low, urgent murmur of voices, footsteps hurried and cautious. I motioned for silence. Through the window, shadows moved stealthily across the yard. Figures cloaked in dark coats slipped between crates and vehicles, their faces obscured by caps and scarves. Emily's breath hitched. "Spies!" Before I could react, the workshop door burst open. Captain Reynolds strode in, his face grim, eyes flickering with urgency. "Carter, Blake," he said, voice low but firm. "There's been a breach. Sensitive materials related to the Thunderbolt systems have disappeared. We suspect an insider." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "An insider? Someone here?" Reynolds nodded. "We're launching investigations, but you both need to be cautious. Whatever you've uncovered makes you targets." Emily's jaw clenched. "They want to bury this, but we can't let them." I glanced at the encrypted module on the table, its blinking lights pulsing like a heartbeat. The war had become a tangled web of secrets and betrayals, and the line between friend and foe was growing thinner by the day. As rain began to patter against the windows, I realized that the real battle wasn't just in the skies. It was here, in shadows, in whispered conspiracies, and in the steel resolve of those who dared to seek the truth. And somewhere, beyond the storm, the silent shadows were closing in. Our time was running out. The storm had fully broken by the time I slipped back into the workshop, rain hammering against the windows like the relentless barrage of enemy fire. The air was thick with tension, electric and suffocating. Emily was there, pacing beside the scattered blueprints and tangled wires, her silhouette sharp against the flickering lamplight. Her blouse clung to her frame, damp from the storm, the faintest hint of skin visible where the collar had come undone. A subtle, almost forbidden allure amidst the grim surroundings. I closed the door quietly behind me, the weight of recent events pressing down like the storm outside. The theft of sensitive materials, the whispers of betrayal within our own ranks, and the ever-looming shadow of the Shadow Hawk project. It all converged into a knot of dread and determination. Emily stopped pacing and looked up, eyes fierce. "James, we're running out of time. If the enemy's new tactics cripple our defenses, the skies over England will belong to them." I nodded grimly. We have to find a way to fight back. Fast. But it's not just about technology anymore. It's about who controls the truth. Suddenly, the faint buzz of a radio broke the heavy silence. I reached for the receiver, hands steady despite the storm raging within. A coded message crackled through, brief and urgent. Operation Silent Storm imminent. All units brace for electronic blackout. Countermeasures failing. Repeat, countermeasures failing. Emily's eyes widened. They're launching it. Tonight. Outside, the thunder roared in response, as if the heavens themselves were warning us. We worked feverishly, piecing together last-minute defenses, improvising jamming devices from scavenged parts, praying our makeshift solutions would hold against the unseen enemy assault. As the first blackout struck, plunging the airfield into darkness, the distant wail of sirens and the staccato burst of anti-aircraft fire shattered the night. Through the chaos, I glimpsed Emily, her face illuminated by fleeting flashes of gunfire, determination etched into every line. In that moment, I realized the war wasn't just a battle of machines or men. It was a struggle for survival against an invisible enemy wielding silence and shadows. And as the storm raged on, swallowing the night, one chilling truth remained. The war we thought we were fighting was already lost in the factories, the secrets, and the shadows. But the fight, the desperate, fiery fight, was far from over. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the enemy's dark design, a secret waited to be unraveled. A secret that could change everything. The silence before the storm had broken, and the real war was beginning.